Breaking news, the Supreme Court has dismissed the petition filed by Rigathi Gachagua that was challenging the empanelment of that bench in the High Court that had that case in which he was challenging the impeachment proceedings against him in the National Assembly. That had that case in which he was challenging the impeachment proceedings against him in the National Assembly. Now, in that ruling, the Supreme Court judges have noted that they can only stay proceedings before the Court of Appeal and not the High Court, citing that it is the empanelment that is in question in the appeal before the Supreme Court and not the challenge of the impeachment proceedings concerning Honorable Gachagua, which is still pending before the High Court.
Breaking news. Niliwaambia mambo inazidi kuchemuka. Kindiki atatorokea wapi? High Court imeamua ikasema kwamba imetoa final decision ikasema kwamba impeachment ya Gachagua ilikuwa illegal. Inafaa Gachagua na sasa arudi kazini, arudi ofisini. Gachagua, he need to resume to his office with the immediate effect. Inafaa arudi ofisini aanze kazi. Mambo ni mbaya na Gachagua atakuwa opposition 2027. Kumeanza kuchemuka. Kindiki atajificha wapi?
Sijui ni mimi peke yangu ama tuko wengi wenye tumechanganyikiwa about this Supreme Court final ruling ya ile impeachment ya Rigiji. So, as a professor, I was trained to think outside the box. Wacha tuulizane. For example, Supreme Court iseme Gachagua was not impeached within the constitution. Yani, Senate na Parliament hazikufuata katiba. Hiyo ni moja. So that means Rigiji atafaa arudi wapi? Arudi ofisi. So the question is, Kindiki ataenda wapi? Ama kila mtu atakuwa na ofisi yake? Tutakuwa na 2 deputy president. That is one thing. Then nataka muniambie tu ukweli. Rigiji sahi akaambiwa rudi kazi, anaweza kataa? Unaweza kataa kurudi kama deputy president? Alafu tuseme by a small margin Rigiji akubali kurudi kuwa deputy president. Sasa tutakuwa tunapinga serikali tukiwa ndani. This thing is funny. And trust me, I see a political tsunami and a big earthquake inakuja kwa Mount Kenya. Because if you want to kill your enemy, there is only one thing you can do. You make that enemy your friend. So, inaweza kuwa finally Ruto ameona hawezani na Rigiji, so akaona the only way unaweza manage Rigiji ni kumfanya akuwe ndani ya serikali. Sasa imagine mkutano. Najua mandate moja ya deputy president inakuwa ni kukaribisha president kwa mkutano zote. That is the mandate of a deputy president. So, na imagine Rigiji. Sasa anataka kukaribisha Ruto. Ruto! Kasongo! Ni wandam! Bukuja ongele. So, wadao, especially people from the mountain, it's about time mfungue macho yenu yote. Because anything can happen in politics. Mimi siwezi shangaa Rigiji kurudi kwa serikali. That is not a new thing. 2007, Ruto na Uhuru walipigana, si ndio? But ulifikiriaje 2013 na watu wanaweza fanya kazi pamoja? So, na vita yao ilikuwa mbaya. Wachana na hii ya Gachagua na Ruto ya maneno. So, unaona kama Ruto na Gachagua in the same room, watu wezi fanya kazi pamoja. That leaves the common mwananchi. The common mwananchi kwa situation zote ndio wanga anaumia. So it's about time. It's about to go down. So this is Daki Media, and any news update ikiingia tutakuwa wa kwanza kuambia. Thank you.
Leo ni ile siku Mr. Wamnyoro anaweza rejeshwa kazi kama the deputy president wa Kenya. Mnakumbuka kwamba hiyo kesi yake alimpichiwa, akaenda high court, court of appeal, kafika mpaka Supreme Court. Na leo ndio rule inafanyika. Na sasa 8 from now mazee, Supreme Court made rule kwamba Gachagua alimpichiwa illegally na nafaa resume kazi. So Gachagua anarudi kazi kama the deputy president of the people of Kenya. So big question ni kwamba akishwa kazi, hiyo kazi ataichukua ama atakataa? Juu sasa hizi wako na bad blood na his former boss. Na huyo jamaa wa Soprano, fire si fire. Naye ataenda wapi? Ni wasi wa tech.
So yesterday, the Supreme Court rendered a verdict on two matters touching on Gachagua. In the first application, Gachagua sought to block the High Court from hearing his case, and in the second application, the National Assembly sought to dismiss the very appeal by Rigathi Gachagua to the Supreme Court. And these are the findings that the Supreme Court, based on the consolidated applications, reached. And I quote, Number 1, the first omnibus application by Honorable Gachagua is dismissed for the reasons that the Supreme Court can only stay proceedings before the Court of Appeal and not the High Court as prayed for. The appeal by the National Assembly is not one that was capable of summarily being dismissed and warrants determination on merit. And the documents sought to be expunged are integral to the determination of the appeal before the Supreme Court and were referred to both the High Court and the Court of Appeal in their determination of the dispute. Number 2, the second application by the National Assembly is dismissed for the reason that the cross appeal by Honorable Gachagua equally does not fall within the parameters of summary dismissal. Accordingly, the Supreme Court dismisses both applications with no orders as to costs. Now, what does this finding mean moving forward? That's what I want us to look into in this video, and so with no further ado, let's get after it. Number 1, we currently have 40 cases challenging the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua, and what the Supreme Court is saying is that it will not halt or interfere with the High Court reaching a determination on the matter before them. And the basis for saying that is the fact that they can only handle cases which emanate from the Court of Appeal. That much we understand, and we can argue it's a valid point. But on the flip side, the question is, why on earth would Gachagua not want his case to be heard by the High Court? The reason is simple. If one is yet to exhaust the avenues of appeal, he or she is still eligible to vie for office. So if this matter was delayed and heard after 2027, Gachagua would technically still be on the ballot. But if a determination is made beforehand by the High Court, Court of Appeal, and ultimately the Supreme Court, as was the case for Mike Sonko in 2022, then all is lost. In fact, just listening to Riggy explaining this phenomenon himself.
John Weluke, the MP for Sirisia, was convicted and jailed for 74 years, okay, before the elections, okay? He filed an appeal before the High Court. When the elections came, the law is very clear that the Constitution guarantees your right to vie for elective office, even if you have been convicted, if you have not exhausted the remedies available in law, okay? Rigathi Gachagua has a matter before the High Court. It has not even been heard. It needs to go to the High Court, Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, until the Supreme Court says Rigathi Gachagua was impeached properly. If the Supreme Court opposed my impeachment, then I cannot run. Okay. It has not. The High Court has not. The Court of Appeal has not. Until that has happened, Rigathi Gachagua remains free to vie for office. And I don't want to discuss.
So yes, the Supreme Court seems to be very much in Kasongo's pocket, and they are hurriedly trying to bury Gachagua legally ahead of his 2027 presidential bid. Now, is all lost? No. If Gachagua's legal counsel wants to keep stalling proceedings, they actually can. Reason being, we even yet to reach a determination on whether the illegal bench empaneled by Philomena Mwilu is valid. So we can also play those games and deliver Gachagua to the ballot box if we want. And kikiumana, if the people so please, we can rise up and say, no Gachagua, no elections. And you'll have to bow down to the will of the people. In fact, hata Kalonzo ashaanza kuitisha mic check 1-2 ya maandamano, just listening to this.
Nchi wenyewe wanasema Riggy alituambia ukweli. Hao watu wanaiba pesa zetu za masomo yetu na kuja kuharibu hapa. Nimeona hata mtu awaria hapa. Kwa hivyo maandamano yatatoka Mandera mpaka Kisumu. Wangapi wako tayari?
So long story short, there's nothing that has changed much for Rigathi Gachagua. This ruling, all it did was adjust the speed and momentum of these cases. Because you see, if the Supreme Court halted the High Court from hearing the matter, for sure, this issue would have been heard probably after 2027 when Gachagua was a candidate, maybe he's even a sitting Prime Cabinet Secretary, sitting Deputy President, or even a sitting President. But because they've refused to halt it, they can jump pack it through the High Court and they can consolidate it into one one ruling, Court of Appeal ichukue in one day waamue, next week they hand it over to the Supreme Court. It's they're basically trying to rush it through. And that's what the National Assembly is seeking. Because the moment they saw Gachagua going to the Supreme Court, they also filed theirs to stop Gachagua's appeal to the Supreme Court. It's a battle for time. It's 535 days to the next election, and kuna watu wako na tumbo joto sana, specifically the Kasongo group. They don't want Kalonzo on the ballot, they don't want Gachagua on the ballot, they don't want Matiang'i on the ballot. Kama nyinyi ni wanaume, simungoje tu yule mtapewa. Mbio ni ya nini? Unless of course you know you are going to go nowhere and you are predestined to lose the 2027 election.